I'm honored to be introducing our editor, Brian Burrows, and the director of the film and the founder of this amazing vax movement, Dr. Andrew Wakefield.
Thank you guys, thank you so much for coming, for being here. Toronto has a special place in my heart. I was here in 86, 87, studying at U of T, doing a postgraduate fellowship. It was really where all of this work began. And I was telling Brian earlier, the Maple Leafs were playing like idiots. George Bell was hitting well, so that kind of made up for it in a way. And the only pub that I remember being open was the Madison. I don't remember any other place. This town has really taken off, but it's a great pleasure to be back causing trouble in Canada again. First thing we'd love to do, and we always do this, is to honor those people who've actually been part of this. And what I'd like to do is to ask those people here who have a child with autism or a family member affected by vaccine injury, please, would you just stand for a moment? Wow. Now this is amazing. And when we go to, thank you very much, when we go to the great majority of screenings, 2/3 to a half of the audience stand up. Now this is really, really important because the vast majority of people who are here tonight are not directly involved in vaccine injury. In other words, you've come here specifically because you are interested in this subject, that you are open-minded enough to come and to listen to this crucial story, a story of the worst medical fraud in the history of the world, that has been perpetrated by an agency that is morally and professionally dedicated, we thought, to the protection of the children of the United States, and by proxy the children of the world, because of course the CDC is one of the most foremost medical agencies in the world, has an impact on everybody else, including you here in Canada. If the CDC says it's safe, then the rest of the world pretty much accepts that yes, it's safe. And now we know that you've been lied to. And it speaks volumes that those people who are not directly involved in vaccine injury have come here, so I applaud you. Thank you very much. Are there any healthcare professionals in the audience? Again, thank you very much for coming. That's wonderful. Brian, as a son of Toronto, do you just want to say it?
Yeah, I just want to say I grew up in Unionville, lived downtown Toronto for most of my life, and have been in Austin since 1999. But I'm so proud that we can bring this back here because this is the most important city in Canada. Whatever happens here in Toronto affects the rest of Canada. So thank you guys for supporting this film. There's a huge Facebook group here. How many people here are part of the Bring Vax to Toronto group? Great. Well, thank you guys very much for your support. And if you guys have questions for Andy, please stand up and make them short and sweet.
Yeah. Shout them out. I just want to say one thing before going to questions, and that is that as you probably know, almost certainly you know, we've thrown out of Tribeca. We were, because of pressure from corporate sponsors on De Niro and his colleagues. And when a film festival, which is essentially the last bastion of free artistic expression in film, is compromised, becomes a mouthpiece, a propaganda instrument for the sponsors of that film, then that is a very, very sad day indeed. Far sadder for Tribeca than it was, in fact, for us, because it launched this film onto the world stage. It reminded me of when I was growing up in the west of England, The Exorcist came out. I was too young to go and see it. You had to be 18 to go and see it. And I snuck down, and around the block there were lines and lines of people going there. And in the street there were priests with banners saying, "If you watch this movie, you will go to hell." Okay? And people in the line were saying, "I know what the hell this movie's about, but I gotta go and see it." Okay? If you try and tell people what they should see, what they should think and say, then they will react. Okay? So don't do it. And it was the biggest public relations mistake they could ever have made, was to have that film banned from Tribeca. Because then everybody said, wow. And it trended #1 in the world after that, above Batman versus whoever he was against. I mean, who knows? Because VAXXED was up there. And thank you very much. Our producer said to a friend of his at Disney, he said, "What would it have cost me to get this kind of publicity?" He said, "You could have taken on the 5 top companies in the world and you still could have not got the public. No one could afford this." So thank you very much to the pharmaceutical industry for that one. But censorship is alive and well and exists right here in Toronto. I was due to be interviewed on that television station, national television station. And I made it a condition of appearing on the station that the anchors saw the film beforehand. Because then unlike most reviewers who've reviewed the film, you have to see the film before you review it, and that hasn't happened so far. And so yesterday, 2 days ago in the afternoon, after the time that they were allocated to watch the film, we were pulled. The interview was cancelled. My suspicion is that it was going to be like every other interview. I've been doing this for 20 years now. It was going to be a hit piece. It was going to be an ambush. It was going to be, this is all discredited, debunked, your conspiracy theory, fraud, anti-vaxxer. That's what it was going to be. And then they watched the film and they thought, oh shit, we have got a problem. And they backed off. And for me, that makes them an accessory to the fraud. Because what they do by doing that is deprive you, Canadian citizens, of the truth, of access to having an opinion, one way or another, about one of the most crucial topics in the world today. You were denied informed consent. You were denied it by the media, a media that has largely become beholden to public health, and in the United States most certainly owned by the pharmaceutical industry. So with that, let's take questions. One question only, please. Let's get us through as many as possible. No long commentaries, and let's see where we go. Thank you very much. Next question. Over here, yes. Stand up and shout it out, please.
Yes, it was a skin reaction to a vaccine. What I've often wondered is, in the same way that it would be criminal for medical people to give blood transfusions without screening for blood type, given the vast complexity of the human immune system, how can they even mandate vaccines for all of the children without having any kind of screening testing?
Right, so yes, how can public health justify a one-size-fits-all vaccination program? And the question is really an extremely important one. A parent put it extremely well the other day. They said it's like taking a bottle of vodka and pouring it into shot glasses and starting to drink, and at some stage we will all fall down. But because we are individuals, because we have a genetic profile that determines our ability to detoxify, because the functions of our liver and kidneys are different, then we will all fall down at a different stage. Some after 3 shots, some after 6, some after 9, and some people will remain standing after the whole bottle. And that is the genetic complexity of the human being, as well as factors like, are you well at the time that you're vaccinated? How many vaccines do you get at the same time? Are you on antibiotics or recently been on antibiotics? It's recently been shown at the Mayo Clinic that there is now a subject called adversinomics, the differential response of individuals to vaccines depending upon the way in which their immune system reacts. It's now known that there is a wide range of differing reactions to vaccines characterized by a different immune response. One size does not fit all. It's like saying that penicillin is safe for everybody. No, it's not. A life-saving drug in infections for many people, some people will die within minutes of having penicillin. It is not one size fits all, and vaccines are not one size fits all. It's a very, very important thing that was obvious, intuitive from the very beginning, but was completely ignored in the drive for the greater good. We don't care that some children are going to get permanently maimed or die from these vaccines as long as it serves the greater good. And now we know that that greater good has only been served by deceit, by lies, and by fraud. And if they had been honest in 2001 when they had this information, we would have many, many answers to those questions now, because Congress would have put the billions of dollars into vaccine safety research that were necessary to answer the many questions that you have about this. But we're not. We exist in a mire of ignorance because of the fraud committed by the very agency that should have been doing its job. This gentleman here is.
Is it fair to say that you're not against vaccines as a tool of public health, but against vaccines when simplified and marketed in a cost-efficient way?
My interest is, and I say this in the movie, is safe, effective vaccines against serious infectious disease, laudable. Do any vaccines on the market today meet those criteria? No, they don't. And the deeper I go into this, the more I realize that is the case. I started off with MMR because that's where parents came from. That's the story parents told. That is the beginning and the end of clinical medicine. What does the patient or the patient's parents say happened to them? These weren't anti-vaccine parents. They took their children to be vaccinated. They are simply saying this is what happened as a consequence. So it started with MMR, then I came to the States and I discovered that mercury was used as a preservative in many of the vaccines. I thought, that's crazy. No, it isn't. No one would inject anyone with mercury. It's one of the most poisonous substances on the planet. And yet you find that it's been given in huge doses, cumulative doses, to infants, way above the EPA guidelines. Then I discover that there's aluminum in there, a known neurotoxin and a known immunotoxin that the head of vaccine adjuvants for SmithKline Beecham said recently in Europe, if we were putting this on the market today, aluminum as an adjuvant, then it would not pass the tests. We would not get away with it. So what's it doing in there? It's not safe enough. And then you discover that many of the vaccines have adventitious viruses, viruses that exist in the cells in which these vaccines are grown. And they found this for the rotavirus vaccine. They found DNA from a pig virus. The FDA found one in the GlaxoSmithKline vaccine, in the rotavirus vaccine, porcine circovirus type 1. Porcine circovirus type 1 isn't known to cause diseases in pigs, but nonetheless, out of an abundance of caution, they took it off the market. It was then found that Merck's rotavirus vaccine contained DNA from not just porcine circovirus 1, but 2. And porcine circovirus 2 does cause immunodeficiency and injury to pigs. And so they put them both back on the market, saying that the benefits outweigh the risks. They didn't even know it was there. They had no idea. They've never examined the risks and benefits. How can they possibly say it's safe? So I guess what I'm trying to say is the more I go into this, the more concerned I become. And none of these vaccines meet the criteria of being safe and efficacious against serious infectious disease. Gentleman there, and then the lady over here.
Your film is very focused on the U.S. and the CDC is a specific example, and vaccine for. I'm assuming that most other countries in the world have their own national institutes of health that are looking at things like this. And I'm just curious what your perspective is outside of the U.S. and what's going on there and the lobbying in big pharma. What's happening at other countries at the same CDC equivalent?
Yeah, I think that even though the agencies are different in different countries, the people who are behind this in terms of driving the initiatives, buying the politicians, persuading the health agencies and the doctors to do their bidding are the pharmaceutical industries, and they are few and very powerful. My fear, of course, is that those industries are pervasive. They have markets all over the world, and they are the most powerful lobby, certainly in the United States, the richest lobby in the United States, and they are unscrupulous. Their behavior of Merck, for example, in the context of VAXXED, really characterizes that, where 50,000 people, more people than died from America and Vietnam, were killed by that drug when they knew before it was even licensed that it increased the risk of heart attack and stroke. So this is a company that people trust with MMR vaccine, but don't trust with VAXXED, really. So I think that the problem at the bottom of this is the pharmaceutical industry and their ability to influence, to buy influence in different countries around the world, whether the agency is the CDC or the Public Health Service in England or Health Canada. That lady here, yes.
My husband worked for hospitals with clients, something unrelated to this, and when we were pregnant with her first, he had run a bunch of studies and decided that it was his position that vaccines are research made for an adult immune response and not a child response. And so he urged me, an arts major, not someone that knew any of this, to do my own research as much as I could. And we both came to the conclusion to not vaccinate our children. And our pediatrician constantly urges us to get vaccinated. How could you put them at risk? To this day, we haven't, and we're constantly faced with the question of whether or not we should, and if we're doing more harm than good, and at what age. My question is, what do we do? When do we do? Is there somewhere to look? Would you vaccinate your small children?
Firstly, I don't need to say anything. You've just said it all for me. Your husband worked for the very company that made the vaccines, and he tells you not to vaccinate. Do I need to say anything more than that? Thank you. No, that's crucial. The most important thing. What do you do? Your instinct was not to vaccinate. Your maternal instinct was not to vaccinate. There was a voice inside you that said this is wrong. And I want to say to parents here, I want you to listen to that voice. We are here on this earth today as a species, not because of public health, not because of doctors, not because of medicine, but because of maternal instinct. It is the most powerful force in the world. You must trust that. If that voice inside you says, I know what is good for my child, there's something wrong about this, I know when my child's ill, I know when they're well, I know when they're behaving normally, I know when they're not. You listen to that voice, because it's why we're here right now. It's served us extremely well, and medicine does everything it possibly can to usurp that voice. I'm the man in the white coat, I know better than you do. No, you don't. Okay, so you trust that voice. And if your voice says to you, I am doing the right thing, my children are healthy, then you continue as you're doing. Okay? Because I know, and you just like this pediatrician, just like that beautiful African-American doctor in this, the arc of her story is told here. She went from being very much a pro-vaccine, follow the CDC line, to seeing the data and coming to her own conclusions. There was much more to her story that will be on the DVD, but nonetheless, she came to her own conclusions, and now, having given birth, she has not vaccinated her child. Just like you, people are saying, wow, your child is so alert, they're so smart, they're so far ahead of where they should be. No, they're not. They're exactly where they should be. It's just that other children are not where they should be. Yes, this lady here.
This isn't a part of the question, but I just wanted to say that my two children are with me, and they're 10 and a half and 13 and a half, and they've never been vaccinated. And they are like children now. My son has had one antibiotic in his life for an ear infection from swimming, that's it. They never required one to the doctors or anything. So I can vouch that it actually does make a difference. And I just wanted to ask you, there's two more whistleblower things I know. One is connected to the mumps portion of the MMR that has to do with Merck. I'm wondering if you know anything about that. And also the one in Utah.
Certainly.
Related to their corruption of the
Yeah.
autism.
Yeah. Are there other whistleblowers who are now coming out? Yes. Currently, Merck are in court, federal court in Pennsylvania, under the Whistleblower Act, being sued for having defrauded the American government of millions of dollars, deceiving parents on the efficacy of the mumps vaccine. There are outbreaks of mumps in highly vaccinated populations around the world, people who've received 3, 4, 5 doses of mumps vaccine, including recently at Harvard. They almost pulled their graduation ceremony because of an outbreak of mumps. Merck have known for a long time that mumps vaccine does not work. They claim on their product insert 96% efficacy. That means 96 children out of 100 who get vaccinated are protected. No, they're not. It's way, way, way below that. And they were told by the FDA some years ago that if they could not prove what it said on their product insert, then they would lose their license. And if you lose the license for mumps, you lose it for MMR. Merck have a monopoly on MMR. That's a lot of money. They had two choices. They could improve the vaccine in the interests of the public, or they could fake the data in the interests of Merck. Which do you think they chose to do? The two whistleblowers who've come out, Steve Kralin and Wachikowski is I think the girl's name, worked in that lab, and they were asked to commit fraud. What happened initially is that they couldn't get the vaccine to work against natural mumps, so they tried to get it to work in the test against the weakened the vaccine strain. That's no good. You don't care whether it protects against the vaccine strain. You want to protect against mumps. It didn't even work against the vaccine strain. So then they designed a test that would give them the result they wanted. Does anyone know what they did? In the laboratory, they added rabbit's blood to the samples. They added rabbit's blood. It produced an artifactual increase in the apparent antibody level that protected. Now here's the problem, because the way in which you test antibody efficacy, vaccine efficacy is you take, let's say, 100 kids who've never been exposed to mumps, take a blood sample, you then give them the mumps vaccine, 6 weeks later you take a second blood sample, and you compare the two. No antibodies before, antibodies after. The problem with putting rabbit's blood into the samples before is it made them positive. So they went from positive to positive. That's no good at all. That doesn't prove that you've produced protection. And so at that stage, they told their workers to cross out the numbers and just change them. And he said, that's fraud, we're not going to do that. And he said, you've got to do it, you'll get a big bonus at the end of this. He said, I'm going to report you to the FDA. He was sent to his boss, he was sent to his boss's boss, and his boss said, you are going to go to prison if you say anything about this because you've signed a non-disclosure. And he said, I don't care, I'm going to tell the FDA. Anyway, he called the FDA and he said, this is going on. You've got to do something about it. The FDA were kind enough to call Merck and say, we're coming to do a surprise raid on your lab next week. You can't write this stuff. You can't write this stuff. This is what happened. And so it gave them time to destroy the offending data, except that Steve Kralin had already secured that data. And that is now in federal court. Merck had a motion to dismiss. The motion was thrown out by the judge. He said, you're going to trial. So we will now get an honest answer, one hopes, to that issue. Sorry it's taken a long time to explain that, but I do think that is extremely important. The second issue is a whistleblower from Utah who works with the CDC on ascertainment of numbers of children with autism, and she has filed a case, again, I think it's state court in Utah, accusing them of fixing the numbers on children with autism. It was the same villains who you saw in this study, Jürgen Alsop and Colleen Boyle. Next question, yes, lady there.
My question is about Dr. William Thompson, and it has two parts. I hope you don't mind. The first part, do we know if there's any further movement in the U.S. Congress over investigating his papers? I mean, I think I heard Del Petrie talk about that figure you would probably be a good person to understand what that could be like.
Yes, we are pushing very, very hard with the US Congress. We're using the film and getting people to lobby, particularly at this critical juncture in the sort of political history of America, to make that happen. We are determined that he should be subpoenaed, and we believe that will happen. And if it doesn't, then we will simply file a legal action and subpoena him to some legal action, either in state or federal court. How is he? I haven't spoken to him since we exposed him for his own protection and to get this story out there. So I haven't spoken to him since then, but he's still working at the CDC. He's protected by federal whistleblower laws, so they can't sack him. They've moved him from vaccine safety research to HIV epidemiology. And that's all I know at this stage. Otherwise, I think he's alive and relatively well.
Do you explain what that means, whistleblower status?
There was a federal statute passed by Obama, ironically, just before he came out, which gave federal employees protection if they blew the whistle on fraud within government agencies. I think that's about as much as I know about it, but he filed under that and is protected as a consequence.
Last question.
Last question.
Yeah, we're going to go outside so you can talk with him and also.
We're going to go outside, you're going to buy me a beer, and then I'll answer you.
There's a great pub down the street. I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm also Toronto, London born, Canadian in heart and spirit, so this means a lot to be coming here with the film. VAXXEDmovie.com is our website. You can go on and see there's an RV bus going across America now, and you can follow it. You can do live time on Periscope. Also unitedforvax.com. I wanted to let you know there's a lovely gentleman named Jim who's taking signatures for health Vaccine Choice Canada, who's doing it outside. And you know, this film is only as strong as your support. I mean, literally, it's grassroots all across North America that has brought us to today. 60 cities and 4 in Canada, and going to UK and Italy, and probably Australia, New Zealand. We have these postcards. If you wouldn't mind, if you want to, just grab a couple and put them in a local cafe. Please tell your friends. We were here for a week. We want to stay here for another week. I want to thank Andy and Brian, and I want to thank all of you for coming out today. Thank you.
No, I'm not, like, my instincts are literally screaming out. Don't.
Okay. Take to anybody.